Shalom. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today, the 21st day of the month of Tammuz of the year 5776, corresponding to the 27th of July of the year 2016. Shalom and welcome to our Torah Kollel. And today, with the help of God, we'll be studying some very interesting materials. And I do thank those of you who are joined with me in the Azamra online Bet Midrash, and I do encourage you, please, to join me there. It's so good for me to see the names of those who are participating and to exchange comments and discussions. And I'll truly indeed, like I say, be very grateful if you will join me there. Well, I do apologize for the rather strange image you're getting on the video today, which is, I believe, because of some issue that I have in my broadcast streaming to YouTube, through which this video is coming to you. And so I'm going to have to try and work on that with the help of God just as soon as I can. And in the meantime, I hope you'll bear with me. I'm a little less wide, actually, than it may appear on your screen. And perhaps, I don't know if the vertical stripes on my coat may help to ease matters, and maybe quite a little less wide. Anyway, today, as we go halfway point and just over in the fourth day of this week, the first of the 3 weeks of contemplation on the temple and the state of redemption to which we are looking forward. And I think there can be no more splendid introduction to this than our beginning today with thanks and praise to God with the book of Daniel, the Hebrew text of the book of Daniel, as part of my ongoing series, God willing, with the help of God, 4 times a week on Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays as the first part, the Hebrew Bible part of our regular studies. And with the help of God, we shall be focusing on the end time visions of Daniel in the coming weeks. And I hope we shall gain some very profound insights from Daniel. I'd like to inform you that each day after this live class, that I'm now running the video stream continuously for the duration of the class, about 90 minutes, which, as you know, is divided into the 3 segments of Hebrew Bible, followed by Principles of Torah Law, where today we shall be beginning Tractate Sanhedrin. And finally, the third segment, highlights from the Zohar and passages from the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. So the first 2 segments are recorded not only in video on YouTube, in the YouTube video, when they become available through the YouTube archive, it's all one long 90-minute video, but I'm making separate audio recordings of the Bible section and the Mishnah section of the series, and post them on azamra.org website on the Avram's Tent main page. So if you care to review with the audio, and if you are, you're welcome to use the website. If you go to the YouTube archive, which is also referenced on the Avram's Tent main page on Azamra, if you'll go to YouTube, if you wish to look at a previous class, the class is about longer than 90 minutes because I begin the broadcast some minutes before the class begins, and therefore, you'll have to scroll through to parts of the class that you wish to have a look at. So here we go today with thanks to God. Today, the 21st day of Tammuz, 5776, corresponding to the 21st of July, 2016, we begin our studies of the Hebrew text of the book of Daniel, which we had an introduction to in the previous segment yesterday, and when we heard about the era of Daniel living through the years of the destruction of the temple, through the 70-year exile of Judah in Babylon after the exile, after the destruction of the first temple, and Daniel survived the fall of Babylon and survived into not only seeing the rebuilding of the second temple. It is said that Daniel is Hatach, that is mentioned in Megillat Esther as the one who was the messenger between Queen Esther in the palace of Ahasuerus and Mordechai. And as we shall see in central chapters of the book of Daniel, he turns up in the Persia of Darius the First, who was the king of Media, as we shall be finding out in future sessions. So this amazing figure of Daniel that, as we mentioned yesterday, the prophet Ezekiel compares to puts in the same breath as Noah and Job. And here today we will begin to hear the opening words of Daniel. And let me emphasize that the book of Daniel is actually written in two languages in different places. It starts off in this first chapter in the Hebrew language. However, as we go through the book, from the second chapter and for several chapters after that, the predominant language is Aramaic, which was the lingua franca of the whole of what we today call the Middle East, the whole empire of the empire of Assyria and of Babylon and subsequently Persia, the lingua franca of all the lands from the coast of the east coast of the Mediterranean all the way across to the east of what is today Iraq and Persia. All of this had a common international language, which was Aramaic. And Aramaic is very closely related to Hebrew, but it has its own distinctive vocabulary, its own distinctive grammatical forms. But the first chapter, the introductory chapter of Daniel, is in the Hebrew language and essentially gives us a Hebrew narrative, the very beautiful narrative of how it was that Daniel came to be in the court of Nebuchadnezzar when the exiles came from Judah. So let us, with no further ado, go straight into the text of Daniel. You have in front of you on your screen right now the upper half of the first page of my Mikraot Gdolot, my text of the Tanakh, with not only the text at the top in the large Hebrew letters with their nekudot, with their vowel signs. Immediately underneath the text on this page is the commentary of Rashi, Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzchaki, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki from 11th century France. Beneath that is the commentary of the Metzudat David, which was composed by a more recent rabbi in the 19th century, a very crystal clear Hebrew explanation of the simple meaning of the text and unfamiliar words. I have in my edition also several other very important commentaries. You see here on your screen Ibn Ezra, but very precious here among the commentaries is that of Rav Saadia Gaon, who was a predecessor of Rashi. He was in the 9th century, and he was located variously in Babylon and in elsewhere. And Rabbi Sadia Gaon was living at the time of the rise of the Islamic empire, the spread of Islam, and this is the rise of Islam is something that we shall be watching through the allusions in Daniel, and we shall also see later on his allusions to Yeshua HaNotzri, to Jesus of Nazareth, and allusions to the prophet of the Muslims, which interestingly is not unrelated to the name of Daniel, as he's called in our text, much later on in the book, where Daniel is referred to from heaven as Ish Hamudot. Ish Hamudot, the man of things that are chemed, that are beloved, are delightful. And of course, the name of the Prophet of Islam is similar to a name that we find in the Tanakh. Actually, it's the opposite of what we have in the Tanakh, where in the prophets, the prophet Ezekiel, the temple, the holy temple, is referred to as Mahamad Einenu. So not surprisingly, there is a dark klippah that is covering over this at the moment. Anyway, to continue with, by going into the text of Daniel, we see the text opens, Bishnat Shalosh L'Malchut Yehoyakim Melech Yehuda Ba Nebuchadnezzar, in the third year of King Yehoyakim, of the king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Bavel, king of Babylon, Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, Vayotzar Oleho. And King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon laid siege to the city. Vayiten Adonai biodo es Yehoyakim melech Yehudo umiktos kelei veiso Elohim vayivi'eim eretz shin'or beis Elohov vesakelim hevi beis oitzar Elohov. God, Adonai, gave in his hand Yehoyakim, the king of Judah, umiktos kelei veiso Elohim, some of the vessels of the house of God, the temple utensils, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, the biblical name from Genesis of Babylon, Beit Elochav, to the house of his God. The vessels he brought to the house of the treasury of his God. Well, now, there is an immediate question on our text, which I will deal with briefly, since yesterday I spoke at length about the chronology of Daniel. And let us just recall that the last righteous king of Judah was Yoshiyahu. Yoshiyahu, who came to the throne at a very young age, and he made a complete revolution after so much terrible idolatry in the time of King Manasseh, who brought idols into the temple, and Manasseh's son Ammon. After that came Yoshiyahu, who ascended the throne at the age of 8 and was a true revivalist of the Torah until he was killed by the king of Egypt when he went out to try to stop the king of Egypt passing through the Holy Land for military purposes. Well, now, the 10 tribes had already gone into exile before Yoshiyahu came to the throne. They had gone in the time of Hezekiah, Chizkiyahu, who was Josiah's great-grandfather, and the Nebuchadnezzar had come to the throne according to the biblical timing of the Sefer of the Midrash Seder Olam, which I mentioned yesterday, the rabbinical midrash about the chronology of the children of Israel from the beginning. So according to the Seder Olam, Nebuchadnezzar had come to his empire in the year 4040 before the Common Era. And Jerusalem had already been a thorn in the side of King Sennacherib, the Assyrian emperor, the first world dictator since the days of Pharaoh of Egypt and of Nimrod, this tremendously powerful Sennacherib, who tried to conquer the whole of the then known world. And he, of course, as we find in the book of Isaiah, also told in a book of Kings, and also told in Chronicles, Kings 2 and Chronicles 2, the story of how Sennacherib was thwarted at the very gates of Jerusalem by the divine angel that wiped out his forces. He went back to Assyria and was assassinated by his sons, and that was where Assyria continued to be a power, but its star was on the wane, and it was just after the fall of Sennacherib that Babylon began to rise, and with it Nebuchadnezzar. A very, very complicated, interesting, intriguing character. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, was one that indeed did respect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He knew there is a creator of the world. It is said that when his master instructed him, before he became king, to send letters to Jerusalem, and Nebuchadnezzar, as a young minister, saw that the name of the king was put before the name of God. He said, this is not right. You have to put the name of God first. Nebuchadnezzar is said to have had a cryptic relationship with Jeremiah of deep respect. We find that when Jerusalem fell, Nebuchadnezzar gave specific instructions that Jeremiah must be treated with the greatest care and protected. And Nebuchadnezzar, as we shall see, was privy to one of the greatest dreams of the Tanakh. So it was in the year, it was the first year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. He conquered Nineveh, which was the capital of Assyria. And it was then that he steadily began to expand his empire. And it was in the year 433 before the Common Era, corresponding to our year 3327, that King Jehoiakim was taken into captivity. There was a very sorry history of the wicked kings that were the sons and grandson of the righteous Josiah. His sons, who reigned one after the other, and one grandson, they were all not the best of people. And Nebuchadnezzar just got fed up with trying to deal with Jehoiakim. He sent him into exile. He put on the throne the very young king Jehoiachin, who is the king that we shall see mentioned in a moment in our text of Daniel. And Jehoiachin also went the wrong way. He went according to all of the idolatry dating from the early days of the Israelites in the land of Canaan, and he too found himself in the first major exile. Jehoiakim was deposed, but his son Jehoiachin was actually taken physically into exile to Babylon, and with him, as I said yesterday, the cream, the elite of the Judean aristocracy, the Kohanim, the priests, the sages, and the prophets, all taken off into captivity. And this is what we now will see in our text of Daniel. The third year of the kingship of Joachim, here we have a difficulty which is addressed by Rashi. Rashi tells us, "V'chi efshar loima chen." How is it possible to say such a thing? The third year. Nebuchadnezzar only came to the throne in Babylon in the fourth year of Jehoiakim. Shenemar, as it says in Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 1, B'shono orvis leHoyakim ben Yoshiyahu, it was Melech Yehudo. It was in the fourth year of Jehoiakim, son of Yoshiyahu, king of Judah. That was the first year of Nebuchadnezzar. Talmud Loima Bishnas Shalosh. So what is the Tanakh telling us here? What is Daniel saying here in the third year of Jehoiakim's reign? So he tells us Bishnas Shalosh Lemordoi. It was actually the third year of his real kingship, his real independence, because it was the third year after he rebelled against the yoke of Babylon, stopped paying taxes, stopped submitting to Babylonian dictates. Shenema, it says in 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 1, Vayhi lo Yehoyakim eved sholosh shonim, Vayoshav vayimroi boi sholosh shonim. Jehoiakim was the servant of Nebuchadnezzar for 3 years, and then he turned aside and he rebelled against him for 3 years. Uvishnos shalosh ola olov, it was in the third year since the rebellion that Nebuchadnezzar ascended. Vehi shnas shmona Nebuchadnezzar, that was actually the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar. The Omar Mar, because our Sir, the author of this Mishnah Beraisa, this tradition, this old tradition, Shona Reshona Kovash Nineveh. In the first year, he conquered Nineveh. This is quoting from the Seder Olam. Shnio Ola V'Kovash Yehoiakim. In the second year, he went up to Jerusalem and he subjugated Yehoiakim. V'sholosh shonim avdoi, for 3 years Jehoiakim served him. V'sholosh shonim morad boy, for 3 years he rebelled against Babylon. Ve'i oyeso shnas achas esrei lemalchus Yehoiakim. This was actually in the 11th year of Jehoiakim. Chomesh shonim kedem shkvashoi v'sholosh avdoi. There were the 5 earlier, the 5 years that Jehoiakim ruled before Babylon subjugated him. Shalosh she'avdoi, 3 that he served Nebuchadnezzar. For shalosh she'mor boy, another 3 years that he rebelled against him. V'yoz meis Yehoiakim tachas yodoi, that was when Jehoiakim died under the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. All this described in at the end of the Book of Kings. V'himlich Nebuchadnezzar tachtov Yehoiachin benoi. Then Nebuchadnezzar made as king his son Jehoiachin. Well, I will not go into such detail in every single comment on our text, but let us go further to now verse 2. God gave Jehoiakim into the hand, put Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, and he took the temple vessels with him to Jerusalem. Verse 3 now starts the story of Daniel. Vayomer Amelech laAshpenaz Rav Sorisov. The king said to Ashpenaz, Rav Sorisov, the head of all of his attendants, ministers, Lahavi mi bnei Yisrael, to bring from the children of Israel, u mizera hamelucho, to bring from the seed of the royal family, that is, seed of King David, umin apartemim, from the officers, Yelodim asher ein lo em kol me'um. He must bring children that have no blemish, a real selectia over here. V'tovei mar'eh, good of appearance. Umaskidim b'chol chochmo, with wisdom in every wisdom. The Babylonians, the Chaldeans, certainly respected wisdom. They were masters of every kind of witchcraft and astrology and demonry, as we shall see in the continuation of the book. So he wanted to find out who are these wise guys, these new Jewish immigrants from the province of Judea. V'yoidei da'as, he wants them to be ones that know da'at, the wisdom and understanding of existence of God. Umavine mado, they have to understand the spheres of knowledge. Mada in present-day Hebrew is science. Vasher, and it must be that they asher koach bohem la'amud beheichal amelech. They must have koyach bohem, power in them, la'amud beheichal amelech, to stand in the palace, the chamber of the king. So he wants these kids to be brought to him, that he's going to, as we shall see, examine them, but they're going to be subject, as we hear presently, they're going to be subject to a long period of preparation. And I'd just like to comment on a more Kabbalistic dimension of the verse that we have just looked at, this verse in Daniel chapter 1, verse 4. One of the specifications is that they must have, as we see here in the top line, koach bohem, they've got to have the power, la'amod beheichal amelech, to stand in the palace of the king. Heichal is known, it's the word, gematria of the word is 65, which is the same as the divine name of Adonai, which is the Shekhinah, which is the entrance to association with the king, the Heichal HaMelech, the sanctuary of the king. And this is, says Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, the sanctuary of prayer. You need to have real power of endurance to stand in the standing always carries an illusion of prayer. I know that I once heard that the present Queen of England had to, when she was being groomed for the throne, have exercises and standing for hours, as people do at official receptions. And so here too in the court of Nebuchadnezzar, they would have to have the power to stand in the palace of the king, in the court. Ulalamdom sefer ulashoin kastim. They were going to be taught Sefer. They had to, in the preparation for the court, to learn literature, the literature of the Chaldees, ancient literature. One can just imagine what kind of alchemy and astrology and idolatry and witchcraft was in that literature. Well, Ashoin Kastim, the assimilation of the people through linguistic assimilation, the language of the Kastim, the language of the Chaldeans. The name Kastim is from Kesed, mentioned in Genesis, and he was the founder of this people who are considered the lowest of the low by the Talmud. Vayeman lohem hamelech devar yom biyomo mipas bag hamelech umeyayin mishtov ulegadlom shonim sholosh. The king appointed for them something day by day from the pas bag hamelech. The word pas is the Hebrew word for bread. In Aramaic it is pita, and this is the pas, which is a special bread. Pas bag, the bag, says Rashi, this is a name of royal food. The kids were going to be brought up on getting accustomed to the royal diet. Umiyayin mishtav, from the wine that he would drink. And this, of course, was wine of idolatrous libation. Ulegadlom shonim sholosh. Ashpenaz was to raise the kids for 3 years. Umiktsasam yamdu lifnei hamelech. Some of them, the choice, would stand before the king. Vayibohem mibnei Yehuda Daniel Hananyo Mishoel va'Azario. Now there were among them from the children of Judah, Daniel and his 3 chaverim, his 3 companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Vayosem lohem sar asorisim. They placed before them the minister of the commander-in-chief of the ministers, Shemois. They changed their names. Another aspect of assimilation. Vayosem lo Daniel Belchatzar. He put upon Daniel the name of Belchatzar, which is the servant of the Babylonian god Baal. Velachananyo Shadrach. He called Hananiah Shadrach. Ulemishael Meshach. Azariah Abednego. He called Azariah Abednego. And now this wonderful first depiction of the character of the hero of our work, Daniel verse 8. Vayosem Daniel el al libo asher lo yisgo al befas bag amelech uveyin mishtov. He was not going to, Daniel put in his heart, he's not going to be lo yitga'al, he's not going to get tarnished and polluted with the special royal bread of the king, the treif, the non-kosher baking of the pagans, or v'yein mishtav, or his idolatrous wine. Vayavakesh misar asorishim asher lo yisko'ol. He requested from the minister, the chief of the ministers, that he should not have to be defiled. Vayitein ho Elohim es Daniel lechesed lerachamim lifnei sar asorisim. God put Daniel to find kindness and compassion before the captain of the ministers. There's a very integral relationship between Daniel and Joseph, just as Joseph was in captivity in Egypt and found favor in the eyes of Potiphar and found favor in the eyes of the officer of the prison. So too Daniel found favor through God's miraculous intervention in the eyes of the captain of the ministers. Vayomer sar Hasorisim Daniel, and the captain of the minister says to Daniel, Yorei ani es Adoni hamelech. What I'm afraid of, my master the king, asher mino es machalachem ves mishteichem. The king gave instructions, specifically what you would have to eat and what you'd have to drink. Asher lomo yir'e es paneichem zo'afim min hayolodim asher begilachem kegilachem. Why should the king see your faces to be wizened out of all the children that are of your class, your age? V'chiyavtem es reish el hamelech. You're going to make my head guilty before the king. I'm going to get the blame. So Daniel is intrinsically needing to rebel against the imposition of the pagans, but somehow he finds favor, as we shall see. Vayomer Daniel el ameltzar, and Daniel said to the meltzar, the man over the food, the chef. In Hebrew today, the meltzar is the waiter. Asher mino sar asurisim, al Daniel Hananiah Mishael Vazario, that Meltzar, the chef that the minister appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Nasnu es avodecho yomim asoro. Please try your servants for 10 days. V'yitnu lonu mina zeiroyim v'nichlo umayim v'nishte. Just give us from the kitniot, from the hummus, the beans, and let us eat them and give us water that we should drink. And they will see, you'll be able to see the difference between us as compared to the appearance of the children that will be eating the king's royal food. As you will see, so do with your servants. He tried this matter, tried them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, he saw, and their appearance was good and healthy of flesh, more than all of the children that were eating the royal pagan treif food. So we will pick this up in our next session, and we see here this manifestation of this wonderful miracle that was performed for Daniel and his companions in Babylon, and we shall continue with this amazing story. Just before we do close off, let's just remember how it was that Esther also maintained her integrity in the palace of Ahasuerus in Shushan in Persia, a generation later on in the life of Daniel. We see that Jewish separation from non-kosher food is an integral part of the maintaining of the Jewish soul and spirit, and it is through their separation from unkosher food that Daniel and his companions were able to attain the tremendous closeness which they had to God, which brought to their to the amazing revelations that came through after that. So with this, we conclude today's segment. I'll be back very shortly to continue with today's study when we go into Masechet Sanhedrin of the Mishnah. Shalom, welcome back. After our brief break, I hope that you are getting now the new broadcast. The goal of my ceasing the previous broadcast was to try to see if I could deal with the stretching of the screen, and I hope I have now succeeded in doing that. So with that, I would like now to turn to the second segment of today's teaching, and we turn to Mishnah Sanhedrin, to the text of the Mishnah. And let me, before we do that, just start with a few words of introduction relating to the Mishnah. I'm putting on the front of your screen the opening words of Mishnah Tractate Sanhedrin in my Hebrew text that I work with. There are many commentaries on the Mishnah, but my own preference is to concentrate on the commentary, as I said yesterday, of Rabbi Ovadia from TORAH, because of the great clarity of his commentary, the very clear explanations of some very, very complex and tricky points that he gives us. Well, on your screen now, let me just show you what I have in front of me. We have here the opening word, the title of the tractate, Masechet Sanhedrin, and here the opening Mishnah, which I will put the text of in front of your eyes. When we begin, let me just show you the other things which I have on the page here. This there's two commentaries on around the Mishnah, one on the right-hand side and one on the left-hand side. The commentary of Rabbi Ovadia of TORAH is on the right-hand side of the text here. It'll switch around when we go to the next page. And the other side is a commentary by a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Yom Tov Lipman Heller. He was living in the greater Polish area in the 1600s. He lived through the terrible Gzerot Tachtat, the terrible massacres of Jews across the Ukraine, Poland, all over in those terrible years of 1648 to 1649. And it was he who instituted the prayer, which is printed in our prayer books, in the prayers of the Shabbat after the reading of the Torah, when there are the two prayers, Yakum Purkan, let redemption come, and followed by a prayer for the congregation. Followed is a prayer that is optional, is recited in some communities to cease talking in the synagogue and to cease talking evil words. And Rabbi Yom Tov Lipman Heller saw that the root cause of the terrible afflictions which the communities were suffering was that there was a flaw in the reverence and sanctity which people gave to the synagogue. So his name, as I said, was Rabbi Yom Tov Lipman Heller, and the name of his commentary on the Mishnah is the full commentary. It's called the Tosafot Yom Tov. His first name was Yom Tov, here its initial letters, and the Tosafot, the extra comments. Here in my edition I have something called the Ikar Tosfos Yom Tov. This is the gist of his commentary. His commentary is very long and what in yeshiva circles we call lomdish. It goes deep into acute analyses relating to different opinions in the Talmud, and very subtle and sometimes very fascinating if you have the time. But our purpose in this course will be to look at the simple meaning of the Mishnah. And as I have informed you, on the Avram's 10th class page, you can find links to free online English translation of the Mishnah. I will be following the Hebrew text and providing my own translation with commentary based upon the TORAH. And now let me say a word about why I've chosen to start with Tractate Sanhedrin. Here today, the 21st day of the month of Tammuz, 5776, corresponding to 27th July 2016, we begin our study of Masechet Sanhedrin, of the Mishnah, Tractate Sanhedrin, a very appropriate place to start. Of course, one could start in the first tractate of the whole Mishnah, the first tractate of the order of Zera'im, seeds, which speaks about the daily blessings and prayers. I've decided not to do that for one reason, because it's the place where everybody starts, but and therefore many people are already familiar with brachot. Also, brachot is possibly simpler to understand than other tractates. My reason for choosing Sanhedrin, which is the fourth tractate into the order of Nezikin, the order of damages, the fourth order of the Mishnah, which speaks about the laws between man and his or her fellow with respect to damages, to monetary affairs, to partnerships and ownership, neighbors, and all kinds of other subjects. The Tractate of Sanhedrin deals with the basic organization of the people of Israel as a nation subject to the law of the Torah. The Torah we have, and the Torah we are obliged to study, and the more we study the Torah from authoritative sources, the more wise we become. But as we saw in our study of Maimonides' introduction to his Mishneh Torah, the transmission of the oral law was not, as some claim, something that was invented by people. It was a very ancient tradition which came from Moses, who received the oral law from Sinai together with the written text of the Torah, which he recorded. And Moshe Rabbeinu made the oral law into handed the oral law to his students as we studied, came down from generation to generation, and the repository, the authority over the transmission of the oral law was the Sanhedrin. The long list of names, we went the 40 generations from Moshe Rabbeinu to Rav Ashi and Ravina, who redacted the Babylonian Talmud. Those 40 generations, each of the names mentioned, besides the lists of contemporary students of outstanding sages, but all of the main names, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yoshua bin Nun, Joshua, and later Eli HaKohen, Eli the high priest, one of the last of the judges, and Shmuel Anovi and David HaMelech, they were all the heads of the of Sanhedrins, and the king was not normally the head of the Sanhedrin. He had his own court, but the Sanhedrin of the nation followed the archetype of the Sanhedrin of Moshe that was established in the wilderness. And we find it in the book of Numbers, in the third portion of Numbers, in Bahalotecha. There, when the people have been complaining about the tedious diet they had, and they want meat and they want other things, and Moshe says to God, "Please share my burden." And God said to Moses, "Pick 70 elders who will be with you." Those 70 elders were the archetype of the Sanhedrin, as we shall be hearing later in the first chapter of Sanhedrin. The actual number of members was 71. There was the Nasi, the prince in the time of Moses, that was Moshe the king, and his court of 70 who sat around him in a semicircle where everybody could see everybody else's faces directly. And the Sanhedrin were the authority over the whole Torah Sheba'al Peh. And we shall be studying in the first chapter of Sanhedrin the basic legal system of the people of Israel. We shall be seeing in the next chapter, chapter 2, when we come to it in the near future, other facets of the threefold organization of the people. There was the religious authority embodied in the personage of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. The high priest was chosen by his brothers, the other Kohanim. could only be eligible if he was from the direct father-son seed of Aaron, the high priest. And all of the Kohanim had to have their lineage checked by the Sanhedrin, which was one of the standard items of work of certain courts of the Sanhedrin, to check over the lineage of the priests if they were truly eligible to serve on the altar. So the first authority was the religious authority, the Kohen Gadol, who was officiating over the temple, which was the entire focus of the nation's consciousness. And indeed, it was the Kohen Gadol that where anointment of a king was necessary, if he was not the son of the previous king, it was the Kohen Gadol that would anoint the king. And we should be studying in chapter 2 of Sanhedrin other aspects of the role of the Kohen Gadol. The second major role is the role of the Melech, the role of the king. And the king of the 12 tribes in the time of David HaMelech, and in the time of Shaul HaMelech, and in the time of Shlomo, the times of Saul, the time of David and Solomon, the first king was from the tribe of Benjamin, Shaul, Saul, and the second and third kings were from the tribe of Yehudah, Judah, King David and King Solomon. And all of those kings ruled over the 12 tribes. However, as we know, historically, the kingship split after the rebellion of the 10 tribes under Jeroboam, Yeravam, son of Nevat. And it is not impossible for there to be more than one king in the land of Israel. We find Maimonides in his code tells us that the definition of a king is somebody who has the political authority over a territory. And the Shulchan Aruch defines what qualifies a king to rule over an area if his coinage, his monetary system dominates a particular territory. Of course, the ideal state is the state we look forward to in the future, as promised by all the prophets, that the kings of Judah will rule over the people of Israel, over the restored 12 tribes together. So this is the second part of the threefold elite of the people. After the high priest is the king, who is anointed by the high priest. The king is considered to have authority over actually fighting wars. It is the Sanhedrin that has to determine when wars may be fought and which are legitimate, which are mandatory. So the Sanhedrin is supposed to have authority over the king. We shall see in chapter 2 the limitations on the role of the king, but the king is not only the politically in power in the sense of having to deal with the political and territorial aspects of Israel's existence, as opposed to the high priest being primarily involved in the spiritual relationship of the people with God. The king is out there fighting the wars and also expected to provide livelihood for the people. And then the third element is the Sanhedrin, which is what we might call a chochmocracy, the power of the wise. The Sanhedrin is a body that from the times of Moses consisted of the wisest elders of the people, and when things were proceeding in an orderly way until after the destruction of the Second Temple, there was a system of semicha, of the handing over of authority from a sage who already had received semicha, had already received ordination and authority from one who had it by tradition, by a line of transmission from Moshe and the elders. And you had to be a musmach, you had to be ordained in order to be in the Sanhedrin. You also had to be meyuchas, you had to have an authentic pedigree. It was a chochmocracy primarily reserved for Israelites, but the offspring of Gerim could enter if they were married into the Israelite community, and thus it was that the heads of the Sanhedrin in the generation before Hillel and Shammai were two people with a pedigree from converts, Shemaiah and Avtalion. But the Sanhedrin had to be chosen primarily on the basis of their very great wisdom, which means not only Torah wisdom, but also wisdom of the languages and cultures of the nations of the world. They would be called to rule on questions relating to idolatry, and would have to understand idolatry and the different forms of idolatry being practiced. It is known that the 70 members of the Sanhedrin were expected to understand or have access to the 70 languages. So, as we shall see in the opening Mishnahs of Tractate Sanhedrin, our concern in this first chapter is going to be actually the different levels of courts, rabbinical courts, which are able to rule over different kinds of cases. And just before we start, let me say something about the Mishnah. The Mishnah is full of information. It's a very terse and concise weave of formulations that are fundamental to the whole people, and there's an awful lot of information. And don't worry if you forget it. The point is that as you go through it, you're supposed to try and understand on the spot. You're very likely to forget it, and that's why it's called Mishnah. Mishnah means repetition. As you go through it time after time after time, you eventually will recognize more and remember. So let us, with no further ado, enter the first Mishnah of Sanhedrin, Perek Aleph, the first chapter, Dine Mamoinois Bishloisha. Laws of Mamoinois, mammon, money. Monetary cases involving debts, loans that were not repaid, sales and things like that. Bishloisha, they may be adjudicated through 3 members of a bet din, 3 members of a court. Gezelois, this is robbery, cases of robberies. V'chavolois, cases of injury. Bishloisha, before 3 judges. This tractate is called Sanhedrin, but we are now dealing from the bottom upwards with the different composition of courts having to deal with different cases. Nezek, if somebody causes somebody else harm, either they or their cow strayed into somebody else's field and ate his best vegetables. Nezek, damages. V'chatzin nezek, half damages, in a case where an animal had never before had a history of goring another animal, or he's a tam, had never had any warning, the owner would only pay half the damage. Tashlume chefel v'sashlume arbo v'chamisho, payments of double. Somebody stole. When he's hauled before the Beit Din, he's going to have to pay double, not only what he stole, but the equivalent monetary value of the thing he stole back to the person from whom he stole. V'tashlume arbo v'chamisho. The Torah tells us that there are 4-fold and 5-fold payments having to be made if somebody not only stole a cow or a sheep, but he also went on to sell the stolen cow or sheep or slaughter it. He's got to pay 4 sheep, 4 cows and 5 sheep. So such cases, all the above cases, all monetary laws, we would call it bishloisho, before 3 judges. Ha'oines, a rapist. V'hamafate, a seducer who has to follow the biblical law of compensation to the seduced unmarried maiden. V'hamoitzi shem ra, somebody who brings forth a bad name. This is a chatan, a groom that just married a girl that he married on the assumption that she is a virgin, and he thinks, he believes, he feels, or has evidence that she was not a virgin. He brings out a bad name against her, that she had relations before she was married to him. Such a case, bishleisho, before 3 judges, says the first opinion in the Mishnah, divrei Rabbi Meir, because this is going to result only in a fine. In most cases, says Rabbi Meir, it may be heard in a lower court. However, a second opinion in the Mishnah, v'chachamim omrim, the sages, other sages say, motzi shem ra, somebody who brings out a bad name against a girl, it could end in one of 2 ways. If it was false, he's going to have to pay a fine. But if it was true, she's going to get executed. So therefore, be'esrim ushloisho, this must be heard before 23 sages. 23 is the number of a court that adjudicates in capital cases. And we shall hear later on in this chapter why specifically it has to be 23 judges. The Mishnah now gives the reason of the second opinion in the Mishnah, why must it be heard in the expanded 23-man court that will hear capital cases, mipnei sheyesh boi dinei nefoshes, because there is in such an accusation laws relating to capital punishment, law relating to life and death, and this may only be heard in front of a court of 23 judges. So we'll be hearing later on in the chapter we've just completed today in our opening session, the very first Mishnah of Sanhedrin, and we should be hearing later on in this chapter more details about these bet din and where is derived the where these ideas derive from. For the moment, we will now complete this section and be back in just a few minutes with the next segment in today's learning, highlights of the Holy Zohar. Shalom again. Shalom for the third section of today's discussions. And now we come to the Holy Zohar and to continue something we started yesterday. Yesterday we looked at the passage in the Zohar on Pinchas, and we came to a section that digresses to recall a certain tradition about something that was said by Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Hyrcanus, the outstanding student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And we saw that Rabbi Eliezer had been approached by a frenzied pagan philosopher. You can imagine some Roman well learned in Plato and Aristotle and all kinds of pagan ideas, and he raises a question that is very relevant to our Tanakh, which is why is it that apparently through the whole Tanakh you would only on the surface see reference to two temples: the first temple, the temple of King Solomon, and the second temple, which is spoken about in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, and also is in the prophet Zechariah and the prophet Haggai and the prophet Malachi. So there seems to be only references to two temples there, and the Roman pagan says, so it's obvious that you're never going to have another temple. And we saw the very fascinating answer that Rabbi Eliezer gave to that question. He said, actually, neither the first nor the second temple have yet been built. His answer was based upon his interpretation of two verses from Israel's song at the Red Sea, when, according to the original plan and vision of God, it was to take Israel to their land and to give them the temple out of the heavens, the temple of Bina, the inner temple, and the outer temple, the temple of the Shekhinah. The upper temple reflected in the first Hey of the four letters of the divine name, and the second temple in the second Hey of the divine name, mother and daughter, Bina and Malchut, the inner temple and the outer temple. And he says that these temples, which are alluded to in the prophets, have not yet been built, and because King Solomon's temple and the second temple were built by man, that was why they could not endure, but the temple that will be built by the hand of God will endure forever. And this temple we are beginning to build through our pursuit of wisdom. There were another two questions that the pagan Roman philosopher put to Rabbi Eliezer. So continuing with the Zohar now in Parashas Pinchas, Daf Reish Chof Aleph, page 221 of the main reference printing of the Zohar on the bet side of the folio. Another question. The question which the second question of the pagan was, if you really are closer to God than everybody else, why are you always in such trouble, so sad, so pained? The Romans said that it's the pagans who must be closer to the king because they're always happy, healthy, enjoying themselves. So Rabbi Eliezer answered, we are certainly close to the king, the supreme king, more than all of the other nations. And this is certainly shown by what God has done to Israel. The Holy One has made Israel the heart of the whole creation, the whole universe. Now here, Israel are among the other nations like the physical heart among all of the limbs of the body. And just like the limbs of the body cannot endure for a single moment without the heart, so too all of the nations are unable to endure in the universe without Israel. And here too, Jerusalem is amidst all of the other lands, the holy city of Jerusalem, like the heart in the midst of all of the limbs of the body. And it is in this sense that Jerusalem is the center of the entire world, just like the heart is the center of all of the limbs. And Israel ruled amongst the other nations just as the heart is amongst the limbs. Now the heart is soft and weak, and yet it is what gives endurance to all of the limbs. And none of them know pain and pressure and sorrow except the heart. The heart feels it more than anybody, any of the limbs, because the heart is the foundation, because it has the divine intelligence in it. And the other limbs do not come near to the heart in this sense, because they have no existence and they know nothing. All of the other limbs are therefore not close to the king, because the king is the wisdom and the intelligence that resides in the brain. And the only one that knows of this wisdom is the heart. It is an anatomical fact that there is a direct nerves connecting the brain and the heart. And all the other limbs are far away from the brain, the king. The three main limbs of the body are the brain, the heart, and the liver. In Hebrew, the brain is the moach, the heart is the lev, and the liver is the kaved. So the initial letters of those three Hebrew words, the moach, brain, mem, the lev, heart, lamed, and the kaved, liver, chof, mem, lamed, chof, that is the word melech, the king. And the brain is topping them all, and the heart is directly above it. So it's exactly parallel in the relationship between Israel and the Holy One, blessed be He, that Israel, being the heart of the nations, are close to the king, the intelligence, the creator that rules over all, and all of the other peoples are far away from him. And now Rabbi Eliezer addresses the third question of the pagan philosopher, which touches on our study of Daniel today, who, with his companions, did not want to eat from the non-kosher food of the Babylonian court. So this was the third question of the pagan Romans. Rabbi Eliezer, why is it that all the nations are so healthy and they eat anything and everything, whereas Israel refrain from treif animals that have been improperly killed without shchita and other impure foods, and they are simply not that healthy? The third question of the pagan, Israel do not eat nevelot and trefot. They don't eat an animal that died without being slaughtered, or an animal that was savaged to death or through some injury. And they don't consume all of the impurity and the dirt of creepy, crawling, impure forms of life the way that other people do. No octopus, no oysters, no lobsters, checking against flies and bugs not to consume them. So Rabbi Eliezer continues with his explanation, for the heart is soft and weak, and is the king and the foundation of the existence of all of the other limbs. And the heart can only take for its food the very choicest and purest of all the blood. And the food of the heart is clean and pure. And the heart is soft and weaker than all of the other limbs. And the heart leaves all of the rest of the waste of the foods to the other limbs. And all the other limbs do not pay any attention to what nutrients they have. All of the waste, all of the impurities in the blood, they take it all. And this is what gives them the strength that was seen appropriate to give to them in the eyes of the Almighty. And for that reason, all of the other limbs of the body, you'll find they have boils and growths and outbreaks of rashes and every other kind of morbid state. But that's not the case with the heart. The heart is pure and clean more than all of them. It has no blemish. And so it is that the Holy One, blessed be He, took Israel, who are pure and clean, who have no blemish. And of this it is written in the Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 7, Kuloch yafa rayosi umum ein boch. You are all beautiful, my beloved, and there is no blemish in you. Well, Rabbi Yosef, who heard these words, which were Rabbi Eliezer the Great's answer to the pagan philosopher, and Rabbi Yossi heard it from Rabbi Abba, who was telling over this tradition from Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol. Rabbi Yossi, having heard these beautiful words, he said he went and kissed the hand of Rabbi Abba, and he said, if I'd only come into the world to hear this, that would be sufficient for me. So with that, my dear friends, I'd like to wish you good day or good evening or good night, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me today. And with that, we are concluding today's session, and we'll be continuing this week on Thursday, tomorrow at the same time. You can always find the times of the classes on the schedule page of azamra.org website. You can find the recordings of the Daniel and Tanakh sections of the learning on the Azamra website in MP3 format, or you can watch the entire YouTube archived version on the YouTube channel, which is also linked on azamra.org website. And so with that, I wish you shalom from the holy city of Jerusalem, and look forward to being with you again with God's help tomorrow.